Hey everybody, welcome to ES and Improv. I'm Jack Rita, and in this video, I'm going to be talking to my friend Will Luera, who is a former director of improv at Florida Studio Theater, and also a long time just component of the improv Boston scene as well, and very storied improv career with appearances all over the place, all over
Mhm.
God's green earth. But I met Will back in, it's probably 15 to 20 years ago now.
Mhm.
There was a show on a what used to be a network called PAX that the show was called World Cup Comedy, and it was an improv competition show with teams of three improvisers doing these scenes on these beautiful sets. And it ran for 2 seasons, and then they had a national audition to get some cast members who didn't just live in LA, and which the current cast all pretty much did. And so the Boston area winner was Will Luera, and the DC area
Mhm.
winner was me. And there were five other guys that won their areas. There was a New York and a Chicago and a Dallas and a couple others, Detroit, and they flew us all out
Mhm. Okay.
to do live show in L.A. as kind of like the last step of just to making sure that we weren't psychos and that we could work well with some of the other cast members. But it was that weekend that they flew us out there that they learned that season 3 had been canceled, and so all of this effort was for naught. But it was great to meet Will and the other guys, and it's been great to stay in touch. And Will and I ran into each other again in DC. You were there for, was it the DC Comedy Fest that
That's
you were
right.
down
Yeah.
for? Yeah, and so
Yep.
that was a great showcase of improv and comedy in general.
Mhm.
But yeah, we were Facebook buddies, and tried to stay in touch and see what he's doing. I knew that he had made the move to Florida, but I didn't realize how long he's been there. So it's been a kind of a fun catch up for me. But one of the things that Will has been doing recently that I find quite fascinating, and it's something that he's mentioned on his website here, and it's this under this tab for caregiving. And so, and when I was reading about that, it kind of blew me away. I've always been a strong advocate of improv and how improv can be leveraged in so many ways, but I've only really if I'm being honest, I've really only been thinking about it in a theatrical sense. Just like, all right, we're putting on a show, and how can we leverage
Mhm.
improv in other ways? But Will has gone a step further. So I want you to tell us a little bit about this area and how you're tapping into improv as a tool for caretaking. And it talks about patients with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. This is something that we're at our age, especially. It's hard
Yeah.
to avoid having knowing people or having this directly touching your life,
Mhm.
and as as our populace is aging, we're seeing more and more
Mhm.
cases of this. And so for those of us that do have an improv background, it'd be interesting to learn ways that we can leverage those skills and how they're
Mhm.
applied. So, Will, please tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. So, first of all, Jack, it's been nice to reconnect with you and reshare the trauma of almost making it big. Uh, I still keep in touch with almost all of the guys that were on that trip. So yeah, it's great to reconnect. And so I'll begin by saying that my voyage into improv and caregiving started about the same time when we met when I was still in Boston. I had a student whose mother was going who had just been gone into care for Alzheimer's, and so she was sharing her stories as she was progressing through the levels at Improv Boston. And then at one point, she shared the story about how she started to take some of the exercises we were doing in class into the facility where her mother was at, and how helpful it was. It helped her get less frustrated when interacting with her mother. And she started to share some of these exercises with the caregivers themselves. And she was starting to share the impact about it. Now, if you're to Google Alzheimer's and improv now in 2024, you're going to see tons of research, tons of white papers, millions of dollars that have been put into that. Back then, it was relatively new, and so that was the initial like seed for me. I continued to work on it with her. She ended up starting an organization called Healing Moments. I co-founded it with her and helped her implement the improvisation aspect to it. She continues to practice out of Iowa. I eventually moved to Florida, where I kept doing this type of work. And there's, as Florida has a pretty large retirement community
Mm.
and a pretty large aging community. And so I would go to many of these aging communities, memory care centers, long-term living facilities, adult daycares, where I would take what we started in Boston and I'll start it here. And it really changed the way I saw the art form that we've been practicing for years. It really made me appreciate the power of improvisation, not just for comedy, but for caregiving. And that was just the beginning of it because since then, I've now started to apply the same sort of work to other things, whether it is like anti-bullying workshops for middle schoolers, right, or other sort of practices in mental health. And so and I feel like that's where my passion now and what we've done for decades. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I still love the comedy, I still love doing the games, and I'll do I'll enjoy long forms with everybody. But to be able to do meaningful work like this is definitely where I'm finding a lot of passion right now.
Yeah, I mean, it must be pretty gratifying to be able to tap into um, a skill and a passion that is typically associated with so many positive and joyful
Mm-hmm.
memories and experiences. I mean, improv has always, for me, been very energizing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel nervous when I'm about to do a show. I feel energized. I'm ready to apply that energy into the show, and it's going to be a memorable, and it's often a very positive. Every once in a while, you have a show that like, well, that show was not great, and the best part of it is that it's over. But most of the time, you're building a lot of just really great memories and moments, and that kind of connection. And when you're firing on all cylinders with other people on
Mm-hmm.
stage in improv, it is a form of magic. And so to
Yeah.
be able to say, yeah, I'm bringing all of those positive vibes
Mm-hmm.
into something that could stand an injection of that sort.
Yes.
Yeah, probably pretty great feeling.
Mm-hmm.
How do if somebody contacts you, Will, and says, "Look, um, we've got somebody with Parkinson's or some form of dementia that we want to work with." How does that? How does they get going with that? And how do you begin to interact with them to start applying that knowledge base?
So at this point, I've been able to develop uh, almost like three different levels of application of this work, and it really deals with the level of cognition that they have, right? So if they're still pretty highly functioning, that's one type of workshop, and then if they're very low functioning, that's a whole other workshop, and then I have some workshops that are in the middle ground of that. And so what usually happens is when I get the call. And they're interested in the program, I'll usually visit them, whether it's an individual or a group of people, right? And then I will sort of test out, I'll interact with the group first. And that kind of gives me a sense of like, okay, this is where that individual is, or this is where they are as a group. And then that'll guide me then, okay, that type of workshop I'm going to be applying
Hmm.
to the group. And to this day, like, some of the groups that I've worked with, some are very highly functioning, like they're right there with you. They're playing characters. They're feeding the story. They're even driving the narrative at points, right? And then all the way on the other hand, where I know they're with me, I could see that they're with me, but they might not even be able to verbally or even physically respond. And so that puts me more in a storyteller, And I tell the story for both of us, knowing that they are there with me, listening, and perhaps even still they are in the story with me. And so that's what I'll do is I'll get the first read, and then they'll tell me which level we're going to be applying.
That's really interesting. It reminds me. My grandfather on my dad's side had Alzheimer's, and at a certain point, he was losing a lot of his own identity, but he was still very interactive. And we had an interaction with him one time where he was explaining to us about how he was a Scottish lord and on all the goings ons on his property. And he was about 100% Italian, so there was no Scottish lorddom in him, but he was
Mm-hmm.
convinced of it, and we played along. We were like, "That sounds great," and we were like, "Look, this is the presence. This is what is going for him," and to throw a bunch of negative, like, no, stop, don't do this, this is not true, we could tell that was not going to be useful. And he
Yeah,
seemed to be really relishing it, and he loved the interaction that he was getting with us, which was
yeah,
something he wasn't really getting a lot of outside of it. And so, yeah, without really even thinking about it, we were yes anding what was going on there, and just kind of using that as a way to turn it into as positive an experience for everybody involved as we could make it. So yeah, that's kind of interesting that, and I just never even thought about that in those terms until talking to you right now about this.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, what has been your experience in especially with somebody who is in a further advanced stage, in the benefits that they and their family or their other caretakers are able to extract from that. What's been the feedback?
The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, and from family members who will tell me they'll be like, "This is my dad's favorite time of the week," right? Or probably one of the most touching ones that I've heard was like, I've not my mom has not said anything in weeks, but she opened up in the middle of your workshop, right? Like hearing stuff like that is very powerful, and the administrators of the places that I've been to will comment on how that it's something that they look forward to, right? And to be able to play again, right? Can be very freeing, and to see them come alive, and just the way that music can bring
Mm-hmm.
also can tap into some core memories. I think that play does the same thing, right? Playing games taps into these core emotions and memories that a lot of them have not accessed in years, maybe even in decades. And so to witness that, it can be very powerful.
Yeah, I have no trouble buying into the power of what improv can do for your brain. Because having been I started doing improv when I was in high school in the mid 80s, and I've been able to observe people that were not really exposed much to improv.
Yeah,
And then after they are, and how it has changed them, and it has made them more dynamic, not just quicker thinking. They say like you shouldn't even bother with improv unless you're quick thinking, but it teaches you to think more quickly, and it teaches
yeah,
you how to listen and how to leverage with what you're hearing, and how
hmm
you're able to connect to things from your own past, from the
yeah,
details, very quickly access things and find what's relevant and be able to apply it. And so I think that, I mean, I'm 100%, I believe that improv improves your brain function in
hmm
probably a couple of different ways.
yeah,
And just because it's a two-way street. It is about listening and accepting, but also contributing. So you've got that sort of thing that the more that you do it, the better you get at it, and the better you're able to tap into the wealth of knowledge and experiences, and to also build on it and find ways to connect to things. That's an integral
Hmm.
part of improv. Is it's not just here I'm going to vomit out a bunch of stuff. It's got to connect to the stuff that you have
Hmm.
already vomited out. So we're making a
Hmm.
puzzle. We're connecting those pieces together in interesting, sometimes surprising ways. And the
Right.
comedy sometimes comes out of the surprise, but at its heart, it's a theatrical form where you are telling a story. So
Okay.
it does want to have a certain kind of logic and story arc, even if it
Hmm.
involves squirrels have taken control of our neighbors. There's an absurdity to it, but again, it's a story that has a beginning, middle, and end that you can follow, and there's a narrative that other people can then see how they can contribute to and connect to. Especially when it's going well, again, it becomes it feels seamless and whatnot. So, all of
Yep.
that I think is all part of how your brain improves and develops. And yeah, it seems like it's an obvious thing. Well, like why hadn't anybody really thought about this 40, 50 years ago? It should be more pervasive. And now the challenge is, what are other ways that improv can be leveraged to to improve upon other things? Like I see it with my wife. My wife is she's an architect. She works in a very fast-paced business world, but she has an improv background. That's how we
Hmm.
met, and I see her. I can see it happening where she is tapping
Hmm.
into her improv to be a more effective communicator, a better leader,
Hmm.
and all these other things. So it is a powerful tool, and the mind is a powerful thing, and the improv is rooted in that. So yeah,
Yeah.
this makes complete sense to me, Will. And I remember when I
That's
saw the
great.
tab, I was like, "What's this all about?" And I was like, oh, I'll be interested to hear more about that. But yeah, I mean, you've totally sold me on it, and I think it's a great thing. I think that this could be an area that could really contribute a lot to that. So I do hope that it takes even deeper root and spreads like a just a fungus everywhere, and and can really bring some more positivity to these experiences. Because
Mhm.
as I mentioned earlier, I think this is something that the longer you live, the more likely you are to encounter this from
Yeah.
one end of that spectrum to another.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you for saying that. Like, yeah, I recently got back into rereading Viola Spolin,
Hmm.
and it just kind of reminded me how, her and Neva Boy before her were already, they were on track with this. Like they knew that there was something about learning skills through games, right? And it wasn't before it was even called improv games, right? Just like these games, and they were really onto it. Then of course those exercises end up sidetracking and becoming what we all now know as improv comedy, right? But you go back to like again 100, 120 years ago, they were onto it. They were like, this is good for people. This is a
Yeah.
great way to develop, uh, cognitive abilities, to develop community, to develop emotional intelligence, etc. And so, rereading all of her work, all of their work with Neva Boyd as well, like okay, it's okay to go back to the root of what we did and what we do, right? And yeah, again, the comedy stuff is great and I love it, and there's certainly a healing aspect to comedy as well, right? But then the practice of the games is also very, very powerful for a number of different reasons, not just caregiving, but communication, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, every time I would do like a corporate team building workshop, which was always through improv,
Yeah.
I would start off by explaining to everyone that the best ways to have a team really bond is to have everyone survive a traumatic event or what we're going to do today. So those are your two choices. And for whatever reason, your company has decided to do an improv team building workshop. But what's going to happen is we're having this shared experience, and we're going to tap into a lot of these skills that we all have, but we're not really thinking about other ways that we can apply them. And so, yeah, you sort of the end result is the same thing where you're bonding, you've been through the same thing together, and you're taking those lessons forward, hopefully, and learning better ways to communicate and to just get to a point where you can hear each other and then build on that, to do some yes anding. Well, this is great. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a link to this page here, and it's got some contact info, right? Yeah, you got contact info
Yes.
all over this thing. So yeah, and I'm going to encourage people to get in touch with you. And so, with my dozens of viewers, well, you better be prepared to.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
But yeah, and I think if for anybody who doesn't know Will Luera, he is the everyman of improv. He has skills and experiences in the full range, and so I am going to have him on again, and we're going to talk about other topics because he has a lot of improv wisdom that I would like for him to share, and also because I want to absorb some of that wisdom as well. I'm always looking to improve and take it to the next level. And there's always more that you can learn, and there's always other ways that you can improve your performance and your personality. And that's the thing, is Will is so affable. He's such a likable guy. The other guys at the PAX thing, I was like, I don't know about these guys. They scare me a little bit. That's not true. No, they were. Maybe the one guy, you know who I'm talking about, but no,
Yeah.
it was a beautiful group of guys, and I mean, immediately in the airport, we were in the airport
Yeah.
waiting for the rest of us to just show up, and we
Yeah.
immediately recognized each other. We're like, "Hey, you one of those PAX guys?" And we're like, "Yeah, yeah."
Yeah.
And so yeah, we immediately gravitated to each other, and it was like we had known each other for years. Within minutes,
Yeah.
we were joking and laughing and just whooping it up, and I was so looking forward to it. It was like, I wonder, who I will be cast with. I was just like, this is so exciting, and then yeah, so such a letdown that we never got to really
Who's
do
on
anything.
who's on your team? Do you remember?
Who was I with in the live show?
Yeah.
It was Chris Griggs from
Oh,
New
you were
York.
in
So
New
Chris, it
York.
was me
Okay.
and Chris and this lovely woman, Colleen, who was already on the show. And I've run into Colleen at the Miami Improv Festival now a few times, and I certainly recognized her, and she at least pretended to know who I was, and that was enough. That satisfied me, and so yeah, we had a nice time reconnecting there. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was you and Joe Davis, I think, were my favorites because
Yeah.
Joe is, of course,
Yep.
from Detroit, which is where I'm from. I'm from Detroit, but
Okay.
I moved away while I was in high school, and so
Yeah.
I've now lived in Virginia longer than I've lived anywhere else. So I'm fine. I'm happy to represent, but I'm a Lions fan till the bitter end. So
Well, you guys are having a decent year.
yeah, not too bad overall. So I'm praying for things to work out. Most Lions fans will. They just want to get to the Super Bowl. Do not give a crap whether we win or not. We just want to get there. Just then we can say, yeah, of course we've been to the Super Bowl, whatever. But yeah, so that's how it is. But yeah, this has been a great to catch up with you, and yeah,
Yeah.
I do hope that we can align the stars again and do this, talk about some other stuff, because yeah, there's a lot in your big brain that I want to splatter out so that everybody can partake and
Thank you.
and whatnot. So let us know in the comments if you have any questions or any if you have been able to leverage improv in this way or any other interesting ways. Let us know in the comments, and if there's more about this that you want to hear, we can do a follow up. And and check out Will's website. There will be a link in the description, and and get in touch with Will. He would be happy to take your improv to the next level. And
Yes.
so, all right. Well, thank you, Will. Thanks, everyone, for watching. That's it for this one. We'll see you again soon.